You're editing something. Well, you're looking at something for me right now, actually.
Yes. And I was going to do it yesterday and didn't. Wow.
Wow.
But, that's okay. I'll do it today, I promise. But
check in next week's episode where Katie will still have not gotten it back to me.
Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to the Script Heroes podcast,
where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I'm the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire.
We're going to be talking about our polls for the week, which are going to include Beast World Tour Atlantis, Giant Robot Hellboy, number 3, and The Hunger and the Dusk, number 5.
And on our back issue review, we are talking Frank Whiteley and Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin, Volume 1.
That's right. And if you want to follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, they are all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. My personal socials you can find at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
Okay, let's move on to the news. So our first little bit of news for the week is going to be a little bit of a correction on a previous bit of news from a long time ago. Greg Capullo's actual first book at Marvel has now been seemingly revealed. Ooh. So this comes from GamesRadar.com. Greg Capullo is back at Marvel Interiors for a new comic, which seems to be Wolverine. Fan favorite comic artist Greg Capullo has been back doing covers at Marvel Comics after spending that few decades making a name for himself on Spawn and Batman. And now he's finally taking on some interiors as the new artist of an upcoming Marvel title. So Capullo had posted a cropped image of a first interior page from a Marvel project. And in his first attempt at posting, he had accidentally not cropped out the title, which says Wolverine number 1. He quickly deleted and reposted it where the title has been removed. But the beans seem to be spilled, and it does seem to be not Fantastic Four, as we had once reported, but it will be Wolverine that will see Greg Capullo's return to interiors at Marvel.
I mean, what a classic blunder. The posting and pulling down. What a exciting development. Because we had talked about him working on Fantastic Four, and we were both a little, I guess, confused, maybe, about whether or not he was going to be a good fit for a book like that. But you say Greg Capullo and Wolverine, and I'm like, yep, that makes sense. That's a marriage waiting to happen.
Absolutely. It's definitely seemingly for, interiors and a more long running job. You'd have to assume he's probably not just doing issue 1 of a new series. You have to assume there'll be some form of extended run on this. And I do agree with you that I think Wolverine and Greg Capullo is like a match made in heaven, just a really good matching of styles and artist and character. So I agree. I think that it fits him a little bit better than Fantastic Four. Still would have been interested to see that. Obviously, he's doing a cover for a Fantastic Four book, so it will still exist. But I feel like Wolverine, Greg Capullo doing interiors is, a recipe for success.
Oh, yeah. That is a great update to hear. And I suppose that's another Wolverine book that's being added to our pull list.
We're going to be stacked to the brim with Wolverine books, and what more could you ask for? Do you want to move on to our next little bit of news for the week?
Let's scooch on over.
So our next little bit of news for today is for all our artist listeners out there. Todd McFarlane has released a call for fan and pro cover entries for an event he is calling Spawnuary. Todd McFarlane is launching a new promotion this month in which he's challenging artists to submit speculative cover artwork for his line of Spawn-related comic books. At the end of the month, McFarlane will choose his favorites and feature them as variant covers on issues of his published comics. By the time this comes out, the first week will have ended. That is for Spawn covers. The second week, which runs from January 8th to 14th, are for submitting Gunslinger covers. 15th to the 21st is going to be Scorch covers, and 22nd to 28th will be any Spawn Universe villain covers. So this is a very open, submission thing. I think you just have to post on Instagram with the proper tags, and you will be entered into this chance to have a published cover on a very major comic book. So, very cool opportunity.
So rad. Yeah, you really do love to see big publishers giving a platform to up and coming people. I feel like You see a lot of the same people popping up around the comics industry. Obviously, in indie books, that's not as much of a commonality, but especially with the big two, and even a bit with the big five, you see a lot of the same names coming at you, especially when it comes to variant covers, because it's like, oh yeah, we pulled Scotty Young to do a variant cover. We pulled Tony S. Dangle to do a variant cover. And it's these are people that we know, and so obviously they have cool art that they're contributing to these books. But making space in there for new discovery, I think, is really awesome and a really cool thing of Todd McFarlane to be doing.
Yeah, always got to give Todd McFarlane for being one of those people who tends to try to do new ways to bring people in and try to help the industry get some new blood to it, and he's got a great eye for art. Spawn has had some of the best artists over the last decade, 2 decades, whatever, since Todd, actually maybe even longer than that, since Todd stopped doing it himself. Greg Capullo, who we just talked about, done a lot of Spawn work. So huge opportunity for one of the best-selling comic books in comics have a cover on it. So if you're an artist, I would suggest doing this. Huge opportunity. Do we want to move on to our polls for the week?
Yeah.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Poll List Rec. Our polls for this week that we'll be reviewing on the pod are the Hunger and the Dusk number 5, Giant Robot Hellboy number 3, and Beast World Tour Atlantis. But that's not all we polled. Katie, do you want to talk about what else you got this week?
Yeah, so I also grabbed number 1 of the new Scooby-Doo Batman mashup. Very excited to take a peek at that. As well as a couple of older number 1s. I grabbed Under Heist number 1 and Animal Pound number 1. Both of which I think came out like 1 or 2 weeks ago. What'd you grab?
God. I got Conan number 6, Ghost Lore number 7, Interstellar Dust number 2, Manga Z 18, The Midnight Show number 4, and Savage Red Sonja number 3. Katie, you have strong feelings about what order to review the books in this week.
I think we should start with World Tour Atlantis, move into Hunger and the Dusk, and then finish with Giant Robot Hellboy.
I was going to say the reverse on Giant Robot Hellboy and Hunger in the Dusk, but I am happy to go with your preference.
You know what? Let's reverse it.
Okay. In any case, let's move into Beast World Tour Atlantis. Starting off with Beast World Tour Atlantis. Aquaman versus Aqualad. Beast World plunges into the deep as Garth reacts to the crisis amongst his former Titans teammates. All hell breaks loose in the depths of Atlantis. It's a clash of Aquaman and Tempest in a deep-sea battle royale that points the way to new horizons ahead. Plus Megalodons versus Mera and Jackson Hyde. And Black Mana channels his inner mana in this exciting next installment of Beast World. We have multiple stories here, so I'm going to rattle off the creative team fairly fast. The writers are Cinna Grace, Frank Terry, and Megan Fitzmartin. The artists are Riccardo Federici, Valentine Delandro, and M.L. Sanapo. The colorists are Lee Lauridge, Marissa Luis, and Michael Adaye. And the letters are Dave Sharp and Clayton Cowles. Katie, Beast World Tour Atlantis. What'd you think?
I actually liked this one quite a bit. I think it doesn't have the same cohesion that Central City had, which I thought I liked in Central City. But as we move into this, I'm like, no, I do like seeing kind of these different areas of effect, essentially. I think that the first story had some really, really awesome art. Like these really foreboding looking sea creatures. I think that was super awesome. I liked a lot of the action. I liked that for the first time in both Titans and Beast World, we are kind of seeing Garth's side of things, because he's been a very mysterious figure, essentially, in Titans with everything that was going on over there. So I like that we got to narrow in on him here. How did you feel about the first one?
I quite enjoyed the first one. I also put that I thought the art was very unique and good. So like that's like a double level. I thought it was strong, but I also thought it was very unique. Like it's not something you see often, especially in a big 2 comic book. It has an interesting vibe to it, and I really enjoyed it. It works really well with like the underwater Atlantis feel.
Oh yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit on Garth. He definitely got the increased focus, but I still felt his motivations were very unclear. Like that was actually my biggest knock on the book, is I felt like I didn't quite understand where he was coming from with anything. It felt a
Mhm.
little strange and off to me.
That is super
I
strange.
actually wrote in my notes, Garth is annoying, because I was just like, I don't know where any of this is coming from. It doesn't feel legitimate
Mhm.
to me. That being said, the fight scene, really cool. Even with them fighting what was essentially boiled down to like fodder, we didn't know or care really about anything they were fighting. It was really well done. It was really exciting. They kept up the intensity really well. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, in number two, I this is super duper my style of art. I love it so much with the bold line work. I thought it was, there were a few cheap laughs in there, like their Jaws references and stuff. But I thought overall it was a very a good installment. I had fun reading it. I really liked the twist at the end. Um, yeah, I thought it did a good job propelling Beast Wars while also being its own fun little thing.
Fully agreed. I really enjoyed the second story quite a bit. Captain Boomerang is a fun character and he's done well. Yeah, there's some great layers to all three stories here.
Mhm.
The third story was really good as well. Fun time. Pretty short, I think, comparatively to the first two.
Yeah, but I with
But
that, I think it did a really good job of in that short page count creating a very like distinct beginning, middle, and end, which I think
agreed.
some things do struggle with. It really felt like a complete narrative within that, as we see, you know, Jackson try something, Jackson learn from that something, and the consequences, all that good stuff. I think they did a
Yeah.
really good job with this installment of World Tour.
I agree, and it's I think the first one of them that in my mind didn't have like a clear cut. This is the weak link story that's kind of pulling the whole down a little bit, in my opinion. Where I'm like, this story just didn't hit. This story just doesn't work, or this story didn't need to be in this event or whatever. Like these three felt important, well done, and meaningful. All of them, and that I think is a really telltale sign of a success for an anthology book like this.
What would you rate it?
I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought I thought it was solid. I thought it was a well above average book. I enjoyed it. I would recommend people to read it. I think it stands fairly on its own, so I'll say it's a pull list rec as well.
I gave it a 7 out of 10. I don't think I'm going to give it a pull list rack. I do think it stands on its own within Beast World, but I think that a lot of what it does is exciting because of Beast World and with that greater context. So I won't call it a pull list rack, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. Are we ready to
That's fair.
spin over to Hunger and the Dusk? No, Giant Robot
Um,
Hellboy.
Giant Robot Hellboy, but yes, we are.
Yeah, I forgot that I agreed to your reversal. Let's go. Giant Robot Hellboy number 3. Giant Robot Hellboy goes rogue, leaving both the island and the laboratory in explosive chaos. Inspired by Mignola's hit pencil drawings from Mike Mignola, the Quarantine Sketchbook, this is the final issue of Giant Robot Hellboy. Naturally, our writer here is Mike Mignola, Hellboy, BPRD, Cosmic Odyssey, so just everything. The artist is Duncan Fegredo, who's done a bunch of other Hellboy work, MPH and Crisis. Our colorist is the ever-present and ever-talented Dave Stewart, and letters are from Clem Robbins. I am so sad that this is the last issue of Giant Robot Hellboy.
Me too. Me too. Me too. But what a great conclusion, if I can say
Right?
that. The first thing I was just when you read out that creative team, like it is always so strong, man. Like a Hellboy story is gonna have like greats of their craft at every level, and that's such a nice thing. Even when you're having a story that's just about a giant robot Hellboy, it's like, yeah, we're gonna get all time greats on every level to do this book because why wouldn't we? And it's a
Yeah.
really good time. I think that this is the first issue of Giant Robot Hellboy that, in my mind, pushes beyond just being a fun time. Like right
Mm-hmm.
at the end, Mike Mignola was like, "Yeah, this has been fun. This has been good." But like, I'm Mike Mignola. I'm gonna add depth. I'm gonna actually make this like finally have some levels to it in the final
Right.
chapter. So it goes from just a really great fun time to like, oh no, damn, this is a really good comic book because God, nobody can touch Mike Mignola when it comes to making comic books, and it's really really good on every level. We get the robot kind of fighting without Hellboy being attached, and the question of that, and then the robot like questioning his own
Sense of
consciousness,
identity.
or yeah, crazy good. Oh man, what's Ghost Girl's like actual name? I'm trying to think of what
Gian.
they called her. Gian. We got depth with her. We got like that escape that was kind of thing that was so cool. There was just a lot added into this. Well, like suddenly everything
Right?
crescendoed, and you went from like, oh wait, no, seeds were planted to actually make this good and deep and interesting. And it's just, man, the things that Hellboy can do, and it's just it's what this art form is about in my
Oh yeah.
mind.
And like what really got me is that they were planted seeds. Like you can see from issue 3 what was going on in issues 1 and 2. But in issues 1 and 2, you really had no idea that these, like, it was pitched as Giant Robot Hellboy. It was pitched as this silly action book. And so when these big reveals come out of nowhere, it's like, oh my god, what's going on? Why is Giant Robot Hellboy actually dope as hell?
It's crazy. Like I genuinely don't know how to accurately express this to listeners without them having read the book, because you literally go from like fun time, there was a little bit of like world building stuff, but it was a fun time watching Giant Robot Hellboy fight to issue 2. It was a fun time watching Giant Robot fight to issue 3. Like, oh no, that's good. Like that just, oh, that's got depth to it. That's, I mean, I think you always kind of have to be waiting for that with Mike Mignola. I don't know if he does anything that's like completely surface level. I called this in issue 1 deep as a kiddie pool, and I'm gonna tell you by issue 3 it has increased to the depth of an ocean. Like, it just has that path. It's so good. Man, I really enjoyed this, and that's my note. I don't know, okay, if you want to go more,
No, I
like,
mean the
it's
tricky thing
good.
is
I
that
don't know how to put it in words.
so much of this issue is like big reveals. So it's like, okay,
Yeah,
read it. Like, we're not going to tell you the reveals here,
yeah,
so you can experience them for yourself. Just know that it's well worth it. I mean, 1, it's 3 issues. Absolutely, go read it. 2, it's Mike Mignola. Go read it. 3, it's got such a great, like, I think crescendo is exactly what makes sense. It's this build you didn't know was coming, to this giant, just awesome 3rd issue. Love it so much.
yeah.
And I think that'll be
Totally
a
agree, and I
segue
think
into
that's a good
ratings
transition.
for us.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
going to start with, because you said you went everybody read it. I agree. Do not read issue 3. Like, do not start on
Correct.
issue 3. Go back, get these 3
Mhm.
issues, read them through, because you will feel so much better having read the lead up to issue 3, and you will
Yeah.
go, that was worth it. That was worth the time put into every issue, and you will feel really good about it. So, not a Polish rec for this issue, but the series as a whole is a very, very strong recommend. And I
Mhm.
gave this an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, I had not given it above a 7 in the first 2, because I said I didn't think it went deeper. Now it has. We've jumped up to that top tier of comic books. 8.5 out of 10. Really, really good.
We're coming in a similar ratio to Beast World. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I do think that it is phenomenal, but like you said, probably not a pull list rec. This issue number 3. That being said, are we ready
Yep.
for The Hunger and The Dusk?
I absolutely am. Let's do it. The Hunger and the Dusk, number 5. Tensions rise and wildfires blaze as spring gives way to a fiery summer. The last men's scout has not yet returned from his mission, and that can only mean one thing: he's now a prisoner of the Vangal. For better or worse, Cal refuses to leave a single man behind, even if that means landing the rest of his men straight into a trap and certain doom. This could mean the end of the last man standing. But at least they'll go out fighting arm in arm. The writer is, of course, G. Willow Wilson of Poison Ivy, Miss Marvel, Wonder Woman, and more. The artist is Christian Wild Goose of Batgirl and Alienated. Katie, how'd you feel about Hunger and the Dust number 5?
I love this series so much. I have just been having so much fun reading it. I feel like it has a lot of good depth to the characters in it. I will say this
Yeah.
issue, I think, does have an issue that a few of the previous ones have had, where there's a bit of kind of wasted space. There are a lot of large panels that I don't think need to be large panels, and I do think that there's uh, a big character falling out that from our previous issue, their relationship accelerated a bit, and then they had a very quick falling out. And I'm like, okay, I wish we spent a little more time with them in these different phases of their friendship. But overall, I liked this so much. I think there's so much clever stuff going on with the art in general. There's a really awesome page in the first few pages where one of the captives is hung upside down, and so the next page is the upside down perspective on a very menacing character, which was awesome. I loved that so much. I think the action, as always, is totally rad. I think that the aesthetics of it, as well as the kind of direction of it, just works on the page so well. I enjoyed this so much. I'm sorry I'm rambling. What did you think?
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually going to disagree with you on Wasted Space. I thought this was really, really well done within its space. I'm going to agree a little bit on the falling out being... That's my main gripe, is that it felt a little fast accelerated. Still, I can see where it came from. I still think it makes sense. I really enjoyed this issue. I think it addressed most of the concerns I've had about the series. I feel like issue 4 I was a little down on, both because of the big gap and just what that issue did in general. This issue has propelled the series back into like my favorite, most excited about series. My excitement is fully back. When I was reading this book, I was like, it's hard sometimes when we're taking notes on books for the pod to like still have that like joy of just reading it in like the non-analytical sense. This issue kind of pulled me back into it, where I was just reading. I was like, oh no, this is really good. Oh, what's going to happen? Oh man, that's so cool. So I really, really enjoyed it. Again, it addressed some of my concerns about the series as a whole. The first thing is they said the names of the characters right at the start, addressed them immediately. I was like, yes, good. Because I read a lot of comic books and I don't always remember the names right away. So thank you. Great. I thought the Vanguard got so much added depth to them, and they became so much more interesting villains here. I thought the character work was really strong. We got more information on like the orc-human conflict and why they've been at odds. We kind of got the perspectives of what both main characters wanted. And we don't ever divulge to, I know this is the main criticism you had at the book, we never jumped to another, like we never jumped to the orc group or whatever to change the perspective. We focused in on our last men standing in this issue. So I'm going to say this is my favorite issue of the Hunger and the Dusk that has happened. I really, really love this.
I liked it so much too. Just to quickly touch on what you said, I am a little bummed that we didn't jump to the orc captives because of the ominous cliffhanger from the last issue. But that just has me even more excited for the next issue. Pick a lane. I cannot be sated. I want more of it.
Katie, when we jump to the orcs, I really wish we just focused on the last man standing. Katie, when we spend an entire issue on the last man standing, I really wish we jumped to the orcs.
You don't know what you want until it's been taken from you. Are you ready to jump into
the grass is always greener.
When it's not being
I am. Yeah, I love this. The world building's phenomenal. We're just reminded why this is such a good series. Characters, everything. Art, as you mentioned, phenomenal. The action sequences were so ridiculously good in this. The sequence of the Vanguard with his prisoner, so intimidating, so impactful, so emotional. I love this on every level. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10 and a very strong pull list rec. You can jump in here, I think. You get enough information, at least on the world and on the characters. I love this. Go read it right now. Actually, finish the podcast first. Then
I love so much that this... We've been such an agreement this week. It's literally the same situation again. I gave this an 8.5 out of 10. Literally just that step below you on every single book.
You've been just that little step below me all week.
Yeah. And I also agree. You can jump in here. I think that it gives you enough context both before and after.
Absolutely.
There's a falling out for you to understand everything that's going on. I am so excited for issue 6. Definite pull list rec from me too.
Please no delays on issue 6. Do not blow out my hype. I want this. I want this. But do you want to move into the back issue review?
Let's do it. Batman and Robin, Volume 1. The Dark Knight has fallen, sacrificing himself in the final crisis to defeat the ultimate evil. Now, there's a new dynamic duo in town. Dick Grayson, the original Robin, has taken up the cape and cowl of his former partner, and Damian Wayne, the assassin raised son of Bruce Wayne, has become a deadly new Robin, ready to fight crime by any means necessary. Today, this masked odd couple must stop a rising tide of villainy whose savagery and brutality are unlike anything Gotham City has ever seen. They must also overcome a lethal pair of rival vigilantes with ties to their own tragic pasts and stay away from each other's throats long enough to succeed. Batman and Robin Volume 1 contains Batman Reborn as well as Revenge of the Red Hood. Our writer here is Grant Morrison. Batman R.I.P., Doom Patrol, JLA, Final Crisis. Artist is Frank Quitely. Jupiter's Legacy, he's recently done The Ambassadors. And of course, they work together on All-Star Superman. We also have an artist in Philip Tan, an inker in Jonathan Glapian, and two colorists, Alex Sinclair and Pete Pantazes. Jet, I think we've both read this before.
Yeah, I was gonna say we both
big
read
Batman
this
and Robin fans.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Like I gotta say, like at least 6 years, probably like 7, 8 years since I read this. It was one of the early things that I read when I first started getting into comics. So it's been a really long time. So it was interesting to go back and see if it held up, because there's a lot of things you read when you first start getting into comics, and you're like, everything's good, and then you kind of taper off. But this holds up, I think, really, really well.
I always forget that I've read it because it's got both of those arcs in it. I'm like, oh yeah, I think that I remember the pig stuff, but it was, probably this whole volume of, wait, the pig stuff's over, and now we move into the Red Hood stuff. I'm like, I do remember the Red Hood stuff, but I thought it was its own volume, so it always gets very scrambled in my mind. Because it's got both of those.
The thing that gets so scrambled in my mind, like going back, was, and I think we both had this a little bit because we mentioned it right before we started, but I said, like, I forgot that Quitely doesn't do the entire first 6 issues. So that artist shift, which is, I mean, going from good to good, it's still, the art's really, really strong throughout this whole volume. But I was definitely surprised when, I saw the art shift in issue 4, and I was like, wait a minute. We've only done 3 issues. Why is Quitely not on this anymore? But I mean, they managed to keep it going with top tier art. Mm-hmm. So not really a complaint, just something that quite surprised me there.
Yeah, Quitely surprised you.
Quitely surprised me.
If we want to jump in on the art, I would love to start there. I think one of my favorite things about this series is specifically the creative layouts that Quitely and then oh my gosh, I just said his name, Tan does, where they take a lot of information on the page, and it's a lot of like very dark imagery on the page, because it's a very kind of classic Batman operating at night style story, and they do a lot to create visual interest. I think it's even in issue 1 itself that is one of my favorite examples of it. We have someone running from Batman and Robin, and they jump between 2 skyscrapers, in a classic running from the good guys move, and it like splits down the center of 2 pages, and it looks so good, and it's just such a cool detail to have in there, just really creatively tackling what are a lot of very classic superhero moments.
Yeah, it's a very classic series with like new characters in the roles, which is really, really cool. Speaking of the layouts, like the end of every issue has this like cool layout, because there's always like some sort of little cliffhanger and then a nice like layout of this is the next story. It feels really good in that sense of just like, it's exciting. You get full stories to some extent and lead into the next thing. It makes you want to keep reading the next issue, and the layouts do a big role in that, because they allow things like these cliffhangers to get the right moments, and then we get like there's like 3 little bits from like, oh, this is what's coming, and that's really cool and really fun. I love, and the other thing I'll say is in these classic characters that we're getting in these new twists, they do a lot to try and like reinvent designs in ways. Like we have the new Batman design, which is obviously fairly classic, but it's Dick now, so it's a little bit different. And same thing with Robin, it's Damian now, so it's a little bit different. And then the biggest one is Red Hood. Red Hood gets like a full blown redesign that I'm a huge fan of. I really like the Red Hood design. That is in the second arc, so full credit to Philip Tan and and Jonathan Glampian for being kind of the artist on that. I really like the logo on it. I really like the tall, more classic, like
The
Joker
kind
Red
of
Hood
pill head.
helmet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like this almost Batman-esque outfit underneath the
Mm-hmm.
hood. It all works really well. It spins out of Battle for the Cowl really well. Like there's just really good continuity and really good care taken, and it's very interesting to get these new designs because here's what I'll say: the story is true enough, I think, to like the core roots of a lot of these characters. I think the Jason characterization in this story is pretty like controversial. There's people who really like it and
Yeah.
people who really hate it. I fall somewhere in the middle. There's bits I really like and bits I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's enough care and there's enough love for the characters and their personalities stuff in it that doing these like inventions of them on a design sense is so acceptable because it's like it's
Yeah.
still clearly the right character. So we can experiment and we can get these new
Mm-hmm.
designs, and I really enjoy that.
And it certainly helps that there's some really fucking cool designs.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm not particularly partial to the pillhead
I enjoy
style
it so
helmet,
much.
but it works so well with this suit that I immediately buy into it. But I would like
It's
to
such a good
pit stop
silhouette too.
on right. I would like to pit stop on Jason's characterization though,
Yeah.
because obviously you're a big Jason fan.
I am a big Jason
I
fan.
myself I like Jason. He's not my favorite. But I wore red today for him.
Yeah.
But it's odd because I like him so much when he's under the hood. It's when we see him with, mask off that I'm like, okay, you're a bit odd here, huh, Jay?
Here's what I'll say. I feel like when I first read this, after reading like Under the Hood and that being, I want to say, pretty much my only exposure to Jason, plus like, the movie Under the Red Hood, which is the same story, but different mediums, whatever. Like those were really my only real exposures to Jason, I think, when I read this the first time. Obviously Battle for the Cowl first, read that. Right. But, those being really the main, things I hadn't read, Rebirth yet or anything like that kind of was more Jason content. The first time I was like, I don't know if I love the direction they're going with Jason's character. Rereading it after the things that have happened to Jason's character across the last like 7 years, I'm like, no, this is leap and bounds ahead of what they're doing with Jason now. So you know what,
for
man?
Context, Jay despises Jason getting along with the Bat family.
Yes, yes, I do, because it doesn't work. There's no way to do it in which it conceivably makes sense without either giving Jason a full arc, which they're never going to do. They always take him back to that square one of, Batman's, lost me and I've been lost and I want to kill people and, whatever the hell. They always go back there. And because they always go back there, you can't have him working, because the only way him working with the Bat family really works is a full arc of like, no, now I'm going to be a hero. And they don't want that. They want him to be this anti-hero because he's probably, depending on if you consider Harley Quinn an anti-hero or not, either the biggest or second biggest anti-hero in DC Comics. So they're not going to let him leave that territory. But in that way, you can't have him being buddy-buddy with these people who are so anti-kill, so anti, doing what he's doing. So the like rubber bullets
he's using
or whatever.
Rubber bullets.
I know. Rubber bullets are so obnoxious in comics. Like, I don't know. I buy a lot of shit. The whole rubber bullets shit when they're like shooting these so clearly real guns. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, this, like, I give Grant Morrison a lot of credit, and the art team too, because the design, awesome, love it. But I give Grant Morrison a lot of credit because he was trying to do something interesting here. Like, he was really looking at this character and he was like, where would this character go? Like, what can I do with this character? And yeah, there's the bits that are like, okay, he feels a little bit like kind of just a loser, like when he's out of the hood, instead of being like the beast that Red Hood usually is. Like, he loses that like bestial nature when he's out of the hood for this like, no, I had to be like dick thing. But that is kind of also true to his character. I don't mind the dyeing his hair thing. I actually think that's kind of an interesting, idea. Yeah. I know that's something that some people don't love. I think it's an interesting idea that Batman was like, no, I don't want people to know that there's a different Robin, so make yourself look like him. It's a little bit of an interesting thing where Batman probably didn't think much of it, but it's something that Jason would latch on to, is like, I'm not good enough. You want me to be him. So I like that. The whole like acne and losing his hair thing is a little bit like...
But those are little one-off lines. But I think that you're right, that they contribute to this this image of Jason we get out of the helmet, where like looking at under the red hood, we see him be this like predator to criminals, where he's like, I am dedicating myself to this cause. I'm going to save Gotham my way. And then we see him in this one, and it feels so whiny. And I feel like you really hit the nail on the head with him feeling like a loser out of costume.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that
But I want to
isn't
give Grant Morrison
helped by
credit
the
that like
ending.
yeah. But
where
I feel like yeah.
Go ahead.
You go, and then I'll you go.
In the ending, he's taken down by Batman, of course. He has possibly killed Flamingo, who he has very quickly decided is his arch nemesis.
That was a weird line too, but
right?
Yeah.
And then he's dragged off by the cops, like whining and shouting, and it doesn't have like a crazed mania that you would expect out of a villain or out of like a cool character. It literally feels so like, it feels like it makes him so small in a way that I don't think serves him very well at all. And if it were a normal Batman villain, I can see how that would work, but it's Jason, so we have this attachment to him. He's not a normal villain. He shouldn't be treated like one.
But here's what I'm going to say, because I don't disagree with you. But here's what I'm saying, where like I give Grant Morrison credit, because I think he was really looking at like, what is the psychology of this character? We're not just looking at him from the perspective of like this intimidating force, because he still is that intimidating force. But like, what does he actually feel like? Like, who is he actually behind this? And so I give some credit for, because again, I think this is one of the few where we kind of pushed back that initial thing and went like, well, where is he now? And what is he doing now? I like the idea of him kind of taking on this sidekick in Scarlet. Like, it's a cool little thing. I quite like kind of the arc that Scarlet goes through in these 3 issues. I think it's
love
interesting. Yeah, so I like that a lot. So I give Grant Morrison credit for what he was trying to do. I don't know if it 100% lands with Jason, but again, I think it's a better direction to go with the character than where we've gone recently. I like things that are
super fair.
Trying to continue to work with him in a sense of like, he's going to function not as because he's not a villain. He's not sitting here like, he does end up capturing. I think him capturing Dick and Amy is actually like my least favorite thing that he does.
Same.
Where he like captures them and like tries to expose them. Like, I kind of just wish he was still doing his own thing.
For a second, I do love that his little game is like, oh, if you call in, you can unmask them. As what I read as a bit of a callback to in real life, people calling in to kill Jason. Like, obviously, Jason wouldn't know that. He's a character. But it made me laugh.
No, I like that a lot. And just, I'm going to quickly wrap up because we've talked about Jason, I think, too much for this book. But I think that they did some interesting things with him. I think that having him still work as an oppositional force to, the Bat family works really well. Don't like him, capturing Dick and Amy or anything like that. And last thing, I do like him sitting there being like, shoot me, I'll come back. Like, just the God complex that this man has gotten. Like, really, really cool that Jason literally feels immortal at this point. I really like that part of his character in this. Again, when he's in the hood, really cool. Let's pivot. Let's talk about Dick and Damian, because those are the characters that are so ridiculously good. Maybe one of the best, Dick stories out there. Like, just really, really good for his character. Him, questioning if he can fill Batman's shoes, how to deal with Damian and, bring him where he needs to be, how Bruce would feel about him. Alfred constantly interjecting and being like, he's proud of you. He would be proud of you. It's just such a good emotional story on top of the amazing action and villain stories that we have.
Yes.
And you being our resident Dick expert, I want to hear your thoughts on
I think it does a very good job of giving him, he's not perfect in this book, as it would be very boring to read, and Batman should not be perfect. There's something loose if you're dressing as a bat and fighting crime. We all know this. But with Dick in this book, all of his flaws feel so understandable for where he is in this moment. He's lost his father. He's trying to take on this mantle of the Bat. He's clearly overwhelmed, and you see him really step into that kind of Batman identity on his own. So he's not being Bruce. You mentioned his interactions with Alfred, which I think are an absolute high point of this book. The relationship between Alfred and Dick is so precious to me, because they are truly bonded in a way that I think almost surrogates what you would kind of want to see from Bruce and Alfred, where Dick really does see Alfred as this kind of fatherly figure, and Alfred treats Dick as a son figure. And it's such a beautiful relationship, and it's what you wish Bruce had the capacity to have with him. It's so
It's
great, and I
interesting you
think
said
it's
because
so well
I
done
viewed
here.
it, especially in this, like it feels to some extent like to me like an uncle or grandfather relationship,
Mhm.
where it's like he's not in a position where he can actually be that father figure, but he's like doing things and trying to like give the father role. Like he's like, Bruce would
Mhm.
be proud, but I'm the one saying it. But Bruce would be like, it's this area where it's like I am important to you, but kind of I know that
Mhm.
Bruce needs to be this for you, so I'm gonna let that or try to facilitate that, if that makes
That is
sense. That's the
super
way I view the
fair. Maybe
relationship.
father isn't the right word to go
Oh,
for, but
I'm
that
telling you
kind
my
of
personal,
no, no, no. That's
yeah.
super valid. Um, Obviously, recently, and by recently I mean like 5 years ago now, Alfred did die in City of
Has it been
Bane.
5 years?
I
I
think
would have
it's been
thought
like
like
5 years,
2 or 3 in my head,
maybe
but maybe time
3.
just moved fast.
Time
Whew,
is a little spring, huh?
man,
But
you said 5 years, and I was like,
the
"There's no way."
I could be wrong. I think that it's getting close though.
No,
Um,
you could be right.
but when Alfred died, Dick was still in his Rick phase, so he really didn't get
We don't
his
talk about that
that.
on this podcast.
Look, I will bring up Rick Grayson just to shit on him at any time. Uh, but they really didn't get that kind of final moment together, and a lot of what we've seen with Tom Taylor is a repairing of those Rick Grayson years. And we do get that kind of reparation with Alfred. And I think that's so special. And to see them interact so beautifully in this book really reminds me of the great foundation that their relationship has. It's so wonderful to see. Um, and to look at Damien,
I
what
was about to
Damien,
go there. So
yeah,
yeah,
he did not get much time with Bruce before he died. And so it's really interesting to see Damien not only coming into uh, the kind of Robin role, but coming into the good guy role, essentially.
yeah.
Like, we really get to see him in a justifiably still assassin bred stage. Like, you look at him
Yeah.
now and you're like, all right, Damien, you should know better by now. Like, come on, you've had years. But this is a really fresh Damien, and
Yeah.
I love to see it. It's exactly where
It's
Damien belongs.
yeah. No, I agree. I
Go
feel
ahead, give your
vindicated
thoughts.
because I've been saying it for years, and like part of me always goes when I say things. I'm like, I haven't read this book in so long that maybe I'm like really misrepresenting if I did reread it. But I feel vindicated in rereading and still having this opinion that Damien functions so much better as a Robin to Dick Grayson than he does as a Robin to Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
um, because Robin and Batman need to, be essentially opposites. So when you have a dark Batman, you need a light Robin. When you have a
Yes.
lighter Batman, obviously Dick is still filling the Batman role. Honestly, they do
No,
such
but
a good
you're.
job with Dick, like having his own personality, but also being Batman. Like he's still
Yes.
dangling criminals, but they're actually only 1 foot off the ground. Like it's such an interesting way to be like he's still doing it, but in his own way, and not in the cliche
Mhm.
way of in his own way. Like they're showing, they're not telling. Nobody ever says like
Yeah.
be Batman, but do it in your own way. Like it's just something that happens. But when you have that sort of Batman, you need this darker Robin or this Robin who wants to go further. I think it works so
Mhm.
much better for Damian to be Dick's Robin than for him to be Bruce's Robin. That's not shit. There's been good interactions and good iterations of Bruce and Damian, but I don't
Oh,
love
of
that
course.
dynamic the way that I love this
Same.
dynamic.
And I think kind of jumping onto what you're saying about the opposed Robin and Batman dynamic, there also needs to be Batman needs to be able to teach Robin something. Like he needs to be a mentor for him. And I mean, Damien is literally just mini Bruce, essentially. Uh,
Yeah.
and so putting him with Dick, there is something for Damian to learn there. Because it's not the fighting that he needs to learn. It's not, the scaring criminals that he needs to learn. It's the softer sides of Batman. It's the restraint that he needs to learn. And that, I think, is where Dick is such a good teacher for him, because where Bruce comes from, like, almost an empathetic side of that, where he also struggles with that restraint, Dick is more of a master of it. He is more of that kind of bastion of it. Like you were saying, he's not dangling criminals where he could accidentally kill them. They're a foot above the ground. And it's such a good dynamic for the two of them. And I love any time that the two of them interact in comics. I really dislike Damian on his own, but when he comes up in Nightwing books or Nightwing shows up in his books, oh, it's the good shit.
I agree. I want to go because this is where I've been wanting to go since we started talking about this book, because I think it's where this book lives in like the upper echelons of comic book history, is in its sense of forward progression, in its sense of actual progress, in its sense of actual, legacy and continuation of comics. So let me kind of get out my little bit of why I love this book and what it makes me wish for from comics to some extent. So what this book does such a good job of is touching on the legacy that comes before and moving forward. Bruce is gone. We have a new Batman. We have a new Robin. Dick actually talks about his feelings on becoming Batman before, how he didn't want to, but he knew he was always going to. Something that's been lost, I think, a little bit in modern times is like Dick's very clear place as like the legacy or as the next in line if Batman goes down. Like we've had other people there. We've had future stars. It's like, no, if you really want to show this love and care to the history of like the 40 years that Dick was Batman's, sidekick, like he is that guy who should be, if Batman dies, if something happens to Batman, he is the guy who knows he has to step up. He has to do it. He doesn't want to do it. That makes him so good. So we have that. We touch on that history to get us here. And then we're moving forward in this, like, we have a new Batman. We have a new Robin. This is new. This really feels new. New and old villains kind of spinning into it in a really cool way. And it makes me sit here and go, because I'm somebody who's usually a pretty big defendant of like the quote unquote return to status quo in big two comics. Because I'm like, there's been so many years, like we just can't really move forward in big two comics, and like you kind of live with every run being its own thing. And like I understand why you can't kill Bruce Wayne or kill Clark Kent permanently and just keep moving forward. I get that that's unreasonable, but reading a story like this really sometimes makes you wish there was some continuity of DC and Marvel comics that was just allowed to keep moving forward, because I would be perfectly happy moving forward from here and having this be where we are in DC continuity,
Absolutely agree. And I mean, that's such a testament to the way that the mantle is passed on. Like, it's still a good Batman book with someone who isn't a Bruce clone being Batman. And it's so beautifully done with, like you were saying, such reverence to what came before. And yeah, you know what? Kill Bruce and let Dick be Batman. Like, I love him as Nightwing. I think that is where he thrives. It's his best life, and I love it for him. But he's so fucking good as Batman too.
I don't know if I've said this before on the podcast. I've definitely said it to you before. Like, I like Dick the least as Nightwing between like all of the, especially as a solo Nightwing. Like a Titans Nightwing is a little bit higher on my list, but like Dick is Robin, Dick is Batman, Dick is Nightwing. Like that's my love. He's part of the
Dick
dynamic
Robin,
duo.
Dick
it's
Batman,
baked into
Dick
his blood.
Nightwing.
I also just think that Dick is such a character that, and maybe credit to Tom Taylor's run for bringing in other characters constantly for this. He thrives with other characters, with being part of a team. He's a character that can still have great stories alone, but I think likes having partners and likes having teammates and really finds his niche there.
And that's been a big criticism of Taylor's run. People are like, oh, he's always bringing in like friends to help him. He's never solving problems on his own. And I'm like, no, that's like his superpower is that he has friends. It's great. I love it. But are you ready to spin into ratings on Batman and Robin Volume 1?
I am. I could talk about this book all day, but let's move into ratings.
Let's spin.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump into it first.
All right.
I gave this book a 9 out of 10. I love it so much. I think there are a couple of things that are a little specifically the portrayal of Jason out
Yeah.
of costume, but other than that, it's such a good book. It really makes you want to pick up the next issue at the end of every single one.
I agree. I'm going to be just a tad bit lower than you. I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10. I think, again, it's really, really good. I agree with you. Jason's one of the things that's kind of there, there's certain things with like the villain resolutions, especially in the. I think it's really like this is what I'll say. I think the first 3 issues are just on a whole nother level.
Top tier.
And then the second arc is still really good, but it's a little bit of a step below. So looking at the 6 as a whole, I'm going to find that 8.5 out of 10 as my rating. Do you want to go into our top 10 lists?
Let's go into our top 10 lists. So top of my list, as always, Noctera, Full Throttle Dark. Love it so much. Then it's going to be Batman and Robin Volume 1. Then Chicken Devil, Under Pressure, Radiant Black, Not So Secret Origin, tied with Paper Girls. Then Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Then Savage Dragon. And at the bottom, beloved Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief.
Yeah, we're up to 8 books now on our top 10 list, so we're getting to the point where things are going to start being bumped off in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. I am going to start off.
Girls.
Yeah. No, I don't put that on me. We've been so positive this week. I'm going to start very similarly to you. I have Noctera Volume 1 at number 1, Batman and Robin Volume 1 at number 2, Dark Crisis at number 3, Radiant Black Volume 1 at number 4, Savage Dragon Baptism of Fire at number 5, Chicken Devil Volume 1 at number 6, Percy Jackson Lightning Thief at number 7, and Paper Girls at number 8.
What a beautiful list. But are we ready to head over to the Creator Corner?
I think we are.
Well, here we are in the Creator Corner, where we talk about writing, we talk about making comics, we talk about stuff in the industry, all that good stuff. Today, I would love to talk to you about editing. Now, a few weeks back, you had a very funny response to me asking what questions or what advice writers are given. And then your actual response was that editing is the real writing.
Yeah.
And I think that,
so you mean revising versus like editing? Like I was wondering if you meant like the editor role of a comic.
A little bit of both. Looking at it from our perspective, so not as like a full series editor role, but more from a kind of you've written your script.
Yeah.
And now what?
So your own script, not like somebody
your own script, or we've edited each other's stuff before, so there's a lot of meat on the bone for editing.
You're editing something. Well, you're looking at something for me right now, actually.
Yes. And I was gonna do it yesterday, and didn't.
Wow.
But, that's okay. I'll do it today. I promise. But
check in next week's episode where Katie will still have not gotten it back to me. Which is perfectly fine. She's doing this for free. Yeah. No, don't worry.
Yeah, editing is a big part of writing. I would love to kind of just get into your mindset. You've finished your first run of a script. You have all, 24 pages written. What is your next step after you have everything on the page? I saw somebody tweet this question maybe 3 weeks ago, whatever. And I did reply. And my answer to everybody, always the first... Goes to show that I do not look at Jason's tweets. Joseph's tweets. Look, we were just talking about Jason a lot. Oh my god. That's so funny. But I'm sorry, your answer. Yeah. My advice is always take it, put it in a drawer for at least 2 weeks. You are not allowed to look at it for at least 2 weeks. You will be the worst editor, the worst rewriter right after you wrote something for the first time. Mm-hmm. You will be way too attached to things that you've done. You'll be way too in the headspace of this is what I meant. This is what happens in between the things on the page. If you leave it, I like to leave it for more than that, but that's the minimum, for big books or big projects that haven't started yet. If you're writing something that's coming out monthly, you do not have the benefit of leaving it for more than 2 weeks at the most.
you
But
know.
hopefully you have an editor if you're putting something out
Yeah,
publicly.
yeah, yeah. But if you're not there yet, if there's a brand new project, I'd put it away for a month, 2 months, something like that. Come back to it. You actually won't remember some things. You'll be like, what did I mean here? It's like, oh, if that's not clear, I gotta fix it, you know? So fresh eyes, less attachment. That's the biggest thing, in my opinion. Then there's the second bit, which isn't a necessity, but something that I've done and I know some people to have done, and something that I definitely advise if this is the first thing you've ever written, is put it to the side, write it again without looking at it. You know, like completely new thing.
Mhm.
And then you can take bits and pieces you like from both if you know. But if the first script you ever write, in a general sense, if it's the first thing you've ever written, it's not good. Like, that's the truth. I can go back to the first script I ever wrote. It was supposed to be published. It has not been published. I am kind of happy because it was garbage.
Is that the one that I've read? Important question.
No. That was the script that I did for Hound Comics.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah. You have read a script, which was the first script that I ever did. Yeah, but I didn't finish that. That wasn't a full script. That was like 7 pages. So, of what was meant to be 24 pages.
Probably good that it stayed that way.
Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, gotta leave it. You've gotta really try to like separate yourself from it, because if you don't have an editor, especially like if you're doing something that's going to be creator owned, so even once you get it a publisher, some of these publishers aren't going to have editors. They're not going to have checks. They're not going to have anything like that. It's going straight to the artist. The artist, depending on how close you are with them, whatever, they might not say anything to you. They might say things to you about the issues. If they're not going to, if you have nobody checking your work, man, you got to separate yourself, because you have to do that job yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a good bit of advice in there as well. You can have someone else check your work. Like,
we do it a lot.
Even if it's not someone who is like copy editing, so they're not looking for your grammar or your syntax or whatever, just having someone else read it so they can ask you questions is super important. Because like you were saying, you know what you're trying to write. Whether or not you've succeeded in writing that, you're not going to be able to understand because you have all of that context. So having someone else read over your work, ask you questions about it, even just like leave comments that say, I don't understand what's happening here. It doesn't have to be deep. You just need someone else to look at it.
We've both done that at points, I think, in things, because we typically exchange a lot before anthology stories. We'll exchange our things and look at it. And I think we've both given each other comment of like, I just don't know what this bit is, or like, what's the purpose of this thing right here. And sometimes it goes like, well, this is what it is, so I'll make it work better. And sometimes it goes like, oh wait, that really doesn't need to be in the book, and so we'll get rid of that. But let me throw it back to you for a second here, Kate, because I'm interested. Like, you asked me my first step. I gave you my first step is to put it away and not look at it and get rid of it for a little bit. What's your first step? What is your process when you first go like, it's done, that like initial done button of like, all the panels have descriptions and dialogue now? Where do you go from there?
My big thing, because I try so hard to be I don't remember what the actual like goofy little writer terms are, but there's like by the seat of your pants writers, and then there's, you know, planning it out writers. I try so hard to be a planning it out writer, so I'll write an extensive outline for what I want the issue to look like, and then I will write it, and it'll be completely different.
Your outlines are not outlines; they're just prose. They're just a story in prose, and then you go and you write it, which is very admirable. But when you say outline, your outline is never an outline.
I get excited, okay?
Which I respect and I love, but it's not like, so if anybody listening is thinking of like a bullet pointed outline, that is not what Katie does. Katie writes just like a page that is like the story.
And you know what? The thing is, the thing that ends up on my page is not that story at all most of the time, because I'll be writing, I'll be like, oh, but the character really wants to go here, or oh, wouldn't it be fun if I did this? So my first step is always to go back to my outline, because they are just word vomit, and finding all of the parts that I'm like, okay, no, this is probably an important thing, this is probably an important thing, this is probably an important thing, and then looking at my larger outline to be like, okay, what do I need in terms of groundwork? And then going back and kind of checking against what I've written to make sure that I've hit the beats that I needed to hit.
Yeah.
In the kind of revised version that I've written on the page. So that's
Yeah.
my important first step. But
So,
that does
yeah.
predicate you writing an outline and having a plan for what you
No,
want.
I think that's a cool thing to do. The thing that I've literally started it with the script that you have right now, because that's like the third draft. The thing that I did with that, and I'm really enjoying, at least for shorter things, is looking at it and going, okay, what here is the most unnecessary? Like what doesn't really need to be here, and it's just here because I think it's cool or fun. Like what doesn't service the story, and then going, what bits need more time? Like what is rushed? What is over? Kind of given not getting enough space in the book. And so I'll go, okay, this stuff's unnecessary, this stuff is drawn out, and this stuff is too short. And then I'll go, okay, cut this page and this page, figure out how I can make it work without those 2 pages, flow the story together, and then use my extra pages to say give the action sequence more time, because the action sequence was way too that was exactly what it was here. I was like, the opening is way too long, like I'm giving you way too much context that you don't need for an anthology story. And I was like, my action sequence is a page and a lot's happening in it, so let's cut that opening, and then let's give this action sequence a couple of pages.
No, that's a super great thing to look for, because it's so much easier to cut than it is to write. You really should, when you're in that writing flow, you should just go. Like, go with what your gut is telling you the story wants to do, follow your plan, write more than you need, because it's so much easier to cut what you don't need than to kind of match your tone and your characters' voices and stuff when you're not in that kind of inner conversation already.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've said, I think, literally on this podcast in the creator corner before, like, if you're doing a book and you're not working with an artist who you know really, really well, do not write 12 panel pages. I should amend that right now to do not write 12 panel pages in your final script. You can absolutely in a draft write a 12 panel page and then go back to that and go, which of these panels don't need to happen, which of these panels can actually be combined in sense of like, well, only one of the actions needs to happen, but I can put the dialogue all in this panel, and then go, what can get moved to the last page or the next page, and then you'll end up with a 6 panel or 7 panel page. Like when I wrote, literally, I'm going to keep going back to the script that I'm writing right now because it's what's in my head.
Yeah.
The average panel count, I think, was like 9.5 when I first wrote it. The draft that you never saw because it was so rough. And then I went back and I went, okay, this is unnecessary. This is unnecessary. I can cut this page completely. I can, distribute panels here and here. And now it's like, I think 6.5 or something like that, which is much more reasonable for a script where you don't necessarily know what artists you're going to be working with yet. So yeah, start with as much as you can. I think that's a great point. And then you can pare it down.
Yeah. And consult your friends. That's honestly the best thing that you can do.
Absolutely.
Even if they're not writers. And if you don't have any friends who are writers, send it to us, because we love reading scripts.
We do. I
we
love
are
reading
the
scripts.
script heroes after all.
Yeah. Though, quick disclaimer, anything you send to us will not mean that we do not necessarily have something similar, and thus, we'll maybe send it back to you or not want to look at it. But, you can
obviously.
I
think that's going to wind us down on the creator corner here.
Yeah, you only really got in one question. I'm sorry. I feel like we really
That's all right. We rolled with it. It's like you said, I have my big outline. I hit the important one.
Yeah. But rewrite, show it to somebody else and try to objectively, as best you can, look at what everything's doing from like a form perspective. Yeah. Those are my final thoughts.
Well, there's some wonderful final thoughts.
Yeah. I think we're winding to a close now. So why don't we talk about what we're going to be doing next week or within the next week, because we actually have 2 shows coming out in the next week. So Katie, why don't you first talk to us about, on our normal episode next week, what are going to be our polls for the week?
Yeah, so that's going to be issue 9 of the pod. We have an oversized poll list section, just like we did last month. We are going to be talking about Titans Beast World, number 4, Petrolhead, number 3, Transformers, number 4, Dear Editor from Mad Cave, number 1, Invasive, number 2, Daredevil Gang War, number 2, and Ultimate Spider-Man, number 1. So there's a lot to cover. Yeah, which is why we won't have a back issue review. Jaybird, why will we not have a back issue review? What are we doing?
Well, same as last month, we are at the point in which it is time for our Strange Saturday Super Show. So that will be coming this Saturday. between this episode and the next episode, and you can expect us to be discussing in depth My Date with Monsters.
Yes, it's coming to us from Aftershock Comics. The writer is Paul Tobin. The artist is Andy McDonald. I am super excited because I really like My Date with Monsters, and it is certainly strange.
And I have never read it before, so I'm very excited to delve into this strange story that Katie has picked out for us. But I think that's going to be us saying goodbye for this week. Yeah, as usual, we'll see you next week. Comic Geeks. I want you to respond to me as soon as you hear the next word that I'm going to say.
Okay.
Now.
Wait, the word was now?
Yeah. Okay, we'll go again.
You understand my confusion.